I don't feel pain, fear, desire. It's like all things that make us human are fading away. It's like the less human I feel, all this knowledge about everything, quantum physics, applied mathematics, the infinite capacity of a cell's nucleus, they're all exploding inside my brain, all this knowledge. I don't know what to do with it.
Scarlett, don't put your hand too much in the front of you. You can have your arm a little. No, on left. Yeah.
Luke's work is really what drew me to this project because the script was quite simple, and while the ideas were complex, reading it, the scene descriptions were particularly involved. I just had to kind of trust Luke's vision, and fortunately I had his resume to really encourage me to collaborate with him. And so I remember meeting him and he was like, if you see what I'm seeing, you'll believe in it. And so I just, you kind of have to take a leap of faith.
All of this knowledge, Lucy, I'm not even sure that mankind is ready for it. It might bring us only instability and chaos.
Ignorance brings chaos, not knowledge.
The way Scarlett talked the first time about the script, at this moment, for me, it was done. It was her for sure. Because she was excited for the real reason, which is the story. But then the second step for her was, now I have to play the part. And that's where it starts to be complicated. Because the Lucy at the beginning and the Lucy at the end, there's nothing in common.
There's something happening to her, and I didn't want all of these characteristics to be completely stripped away so that it was just a kind of monotonous, blank performance. You have to kind of see the human behind the circumstance, and it was difficult to try to not have that be totally flat.
Wow, it's crazy.
It's really challenging to play. Everything you know today is 12%. How are you gonna play when I'm gonna ask you to play 25, 50, 70, 80, 90, 100? Because nothing that you can give will suit your state. And we did something very funny. Scarlett has it on her wall, which is 10%, 20, 30, every 10%, what you can do with this percentage. What is your level of knowledge and possibilities? And it was a very good guide. And every morning she was looking to see which girl she has to play. And she was exceptional. I was blown away.
For me, just to prepare for this film, I wanted to be in really good physical condition because I just wanted to make sure that this character looked capable. The audience should be able to think, okay, this girl can handle a gun. And a lot of the movements that I do in character are with a lot of intention and purpose, and I wanted those movements to feel strong. So when you see how she stands, how she maneuvers, it's with a lot of inner strength. What I'm saying is that your theory is not a theory. I absorbed a large quantity of synthetic CPH4 that will allow me to use 100% of my cerebral capacity. Right now I'm at 28%, and what she wrote is true. Once the brain reaches 20%, it opens up and expands the rest. There are no more obstacles. They fall away like dominoes. I'm colonizing my own brain.
Lucy starts, I think it's 10 years ago, with lots of conversation with big scientists. 12 of them were Nobel Peace Prize. And I talked with this guy. I challenged them because I'm a scriptwriter, I'm not a scientist. So we're saying we're using basically 10-15% of our brain capacity. The rest, we don't have access to it. And I was fascinated by that. What happened if, rather than to have access to 15% of our own body, we have 100? And they can't answer you because they say, yeah, but we need to prove it. But right now they can't prove the reverse. So it was a very, very amazing time that I spent with these guys.
Sir?
Yes.
Has it been proved scientifically?
Well, for the moment, it's just hypothesis.
We mix my world and your world, in fact, and how you react to that.
Well, the more we speak, the more I think that your world is like my world. But, creativity for a movie maker is probably more or less the same that creativity for a researcher. What I find splendid was in this film, there are true facts. For instance, you're talking about the number of cells in the brain, the number of signals per per seconds which are produced by oneself. This is true. But of course it's a fiction, and what I like is that the more you are advancing in the field, the more it becomes a fiction.
The next stage would probably be control of other people. But for that, we would need to access at least 40% of our brain's capacity. After control of ourselves and others would come control of matter. But now we're entering into the realm of science fiction.
Morgan Freeman is just the ultimate professor for two reasons. The first, he's totally convinced about the theory because he's very aware of it. I didn't know before we met. He is excited about it. So it was a pleasure for him just to talk about it. And the second thing, he's such a good actor that everything he said, you believe it.
It's up to us to push the rules and laws and go from evolution to revolution.
The human mind is just like any other muscle in the body. If we called on it to do more, it would probably do more. I fantasize that what we can imagine, we can do.
Excuse me, sir,
Yes.
but what would happen if, for some reason, we ignore somebody unlocked 100% of the cerebral capacity?
100%?
Yes?
I have no idea.
Luke and I have talked a lot about his research and how he's developed this story with various clinical psychologists and scientists, professors. But for me, I only wanted to be aware of what Luke had intended this character to be. I didn't want what she sees, what she's experiencing, to be muddled by anything that my character would know.
The first step is access to yourself, the entire control of your body. Then the second step is the control of the others. When it's not you, it's you, and I can control everyone. And the third one is the matter. And then the fourth one, what is the ultimate? And it was very interesting to imagine it.
To knowledge. A lot of this film was really a very solitary experience. She loses the ability to empathize, to feel pain. So I would say the most fun scenes for me to shoot is really the first time that you see my character, because it was really the only time that I was able to try to breathe a real humanity into her and kind of give a little bit of life, or sort of imagine, kind of color this character before everything is stripped away. Life was given to us 1 billion years ago. What have we done with it?
I always have the desire for this film to start to another place.
So long, cowboy.
And Taipei was perfect.
Lucy.
You have a villain who doesn't understand anything. You have the town, the buildings, the sea, forest, you have the mountains, everything in 100 miles. And the people from Taipei are the most gentle people I've seen so far. And they're sweet like angels. And when you start the film, everybody, the French, the Americans, the Taiwanese, everybody say a prayer.
Just a little explanation for you. In Taiwan, when we do a first day of shooting, we usually have to pray to the gods. So these are all the things that we give to the gods. And later on, in about 5 minutes, you'll see a lot of people holding incense, and that's our way to show our respects to the gods.
We shot in Taipei for about 3 weeks. I really loved filming in that city. I just loved being able to explore that city. And I think in some ways, just the fact that we were all so tired and jet lagged and out of our element really added to the kind of the disorientation of the character. But it's a very welcoming city. We really had a wonderful time exploring. Do you speak English?
Yeah, 저 뒤에 갔다 왔잖아.
Good, very good. The first few days, it's a little confusing because I'm sick, speak only Korean. But I have also people from Taiwan who speak only Taiwanese, and French who doesn't speak English, and English who doesn't speak French. So I have basically 3 translators next to me, and every time I say something, everybody's like, everybody was talking. It was very funny on the set.
Learning's always a painful process. Like when you're little and your bones are growing and you ache all over. Can you believe I can remember the sound of my own bones growing? Action! It was wonderful working with Choi. He's a formidable co-star. We didn't speak the same language, but we could communicate very much with our expression. He's a very warm person. So even though we were doing scenes that were really violent and cold and brutal, he was lovely, and was always happy to be on set, and also was wonderful to watch because he's so incredibly expressive, and I think he added a lot to this character that could just be seen probably as evil or bad, and he really fills out that character and makes it a very multifaceted one.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
모처럼 휴가를 받아서 집으로 가고 있는 중에 룩 베송 감독이 저를 찾는다고 굉장히 놀라웠고 제가 그 신인 배우 시절에 그분의 영화를 보면서 굉장히 많은 감을 얻었던 기억이 떠올랐어요. 그 순간 이렇게 연기 생활을 하다 보니까 이렇게 만나지는구나.
I'm fascinated by Chong Min-sik. He's one of the greatest actors I met. He's a superstar in Asia. It's probably DiCaprio multiplied by Tom Cruise. And I think since Leon the Professional is Gary Oldman, I think that's the best villain I work with, because this one is really, really a villain.
I'll be at your door in 12 hours.
You always drive like that?
I've never driven before.
La voiture ressort ici à contresens. Ici va y avoir un gros crash de voiture.
All the stunts were amazing. The car really fly in the air.
In Paris, Luc had this crazy idea of having the car going through the opposite traffic on Rue de Rivoli, which is the heart of Paris. So it was kind of crazy.
Rue de Rivoli, it's a very large 4 lines going one way, and Lucy just with a car go backward, full speed. In the middle of the day. So it takes a week to shoot that. And then you big stunt in a flea market. Most of the time when you do a stunt, it's very large, you don't have people. And here, it's at 2 p.m., full of people, and the cars are just like flying everywhere.
Hey, I'd rather be late than dead.
We never really die.
We're almost done with the filming. We're gonna finish tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow's the last day. I've had so much fun. So much firing guns all over the place. It's been fantastic.
We filmed at La Sorbonne, the most beautiful university in Paris.
Sorbonne is one of the oldest universities in Paris, and you have all this great knowledge. You know, I stopped school very early, I make films. And now I'm making a film about knowledge, and I'm just destroying their knowledge. I think in the walls we put more than 2,000 bullets, rounds, 2,000 of them everywhere. And I have this image of the first day when everything is clean and the last day, and you can't even recognize La Sorbonne.
Do you understand English?
Luc has written a script that represents humanity. Every character comes from a different origin in the film.
Anything that I could have imagined the film to have looked like just from reading the script pale in comparison to the actual life that Luc breathed into this project.
Luc is a movie maker, and if you enjoy making movies, you'll enjoy Luc.
Very impressive man. Writer, director.
Last shot, Mr. Morgan!
Very easygoing, great sense of humor.
I think he could produce financially his films on his own, but I think he likes having someone with an exterior eye that can come in, give him points of view. I think we're a good team.
The most interesting thing about working with Luc is that he's the cameraman, and I think he's a director that knows precisely every little atom on his frame.
One more, just for fun.
Mais au troisième boom, c'est la panique.
He's a formidable type of character because he knows what he sees in his mind and wants that vision to be executed perfectly. And you can see that in the way that he operates the camera and how he speaks with myself and the other actors. And I appreciate that in a director. Isn't that the craziest thing?
It's my baby, you know, I love it. So I want to try to do my best everywhere. I like to be very close to the actors. That's why I have the camera on shoulder and I don't cut. They appreciate that a lot because all this part before action is where they have to prep And if they have to do that every 30 seconds, it's just exhausting for them. Especially with Scarlett, she's amazing. Every time she have scenes with emotion and it needs to come, everybody was there, but the only two where we're looking at each other, it was her and me. And you feel that she's ready. And you just want to be here for her. You just want to say, oh, she's ready, let's go.
Where is she?
I can feel the gravity. I can feel the rotation of the earth.
Allez, 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more.
10 years ago, I thought about this idea about talking about intelligence, but I was not intelligent enough at the time. So it takes me 10 years to write just one draft. But I want to play with that. I met a couple of scientists and I was amazed by what they said. We're using basically 10% of our brain capacity. The rest, we don't have access to it. And I was fascinated by that. What happened if we have 100%? And what will be the logical step?
Sir?
Yes.
And what will be the next stage?
Well, the next stage would probably be control of other people.
What would happen if we could use more of our brains?
I'm gonna drive.
No, this is not possible. This is a police car.
Okay. It was very interesting to play with that.
Do you always drive like that?
I've never driven before.
Great.
Imagine what would happen if you could use 20%,
I can feel every living thing.
30, 40, 50, 100. Imagine. And Luc Besson, bless his heart, imagines. You can unlock secrets that go beyond our universe.
So it starts with lots of conversation with big scientists. 12 of them were Nobel Peace Prize. And they are all of them in the ICM, the Institute for the research about the brain in Paris.
Action!
So I work a lot for years to try to find the right balance between what's real and what's fantasy and make the film enjoyable.
It is estimated most human beings only use 10% of the brain's capacity.
People tend to believe that they're only using 10% of their brain and they have this unbelievable magical capacity. The real answer is no one knows. There are some scientists who believe the 10% number is a total myth and the real number should be 100%. And there are other scientists who believe 10% is actually too generous, that our capacity is infinite. To answer that question, you really need to know something very fundamental. What is the brain's total capacity? And nobody knows that. But the simple fact that you can take a 60-year-old person and with some basic training, improve that person's cognition 15, 20, 30%, suggests that we're not using anywhere close to the maximum possible capability.
The idea of increased brain power may be the answer to that. Big maybe.
If you were to compare it to a car, it would probably be like driving a car at 60 miles an hour. We're not accessing the 120 miles per hour that the car, in theory, is capable of.
The brain is an organ which receives perceptions, the touch, vision, which transforms this perception into action. That's all the brain is doing. It can be very complex.
There is something in the brain called critical periods, when the brain is most receptive to learning and has the maximum potential to acquire new skills and new tasks. When we are a baby in the first 3-4 years of our life, we are born with a lot more nerve cells than we need. That's because we are born with virtually unlimited capacity. And then there is a second critical period in the teenage years where the brain again opens up and gives you a second chance to learn a lot of amazing new skills. But then once the brain has mastered that task, it almost becomes so efficient it becomes automatic processing. And that's how the brain has this almost infinite capacity to keep on increasing itself, because if it constantly needed to rely on different parts of the brain working over time, then there would be a physical limit. Now, what we really need to see is, can the brain do 20 things at the same time while going at 120 miles per hour for all of those same functions? That would be the holy grail. Can you sort of play chess while you're studying for your medical school exams, while you're playing a video game, while you're talking to your mother on the phone? Can you do all of those things at full capacity? And I think that is the next step for neuroscience to figure out.
Since when did you start writing Chinese?
Since an hour ago.
It's, as is, total fantasy. So you can't disagree with someone's fantasy. And let's just suppose for a few minutes that we possibly could use some drug to actually enhance the mind's ability.
We already have drugs that can enhance our cognitive capabilities. For example, drugs used to treat attention deficit disorder like Ritalin, Adderall, all of them are known to improve attention. We have a second category of drugs that can improve memory by 10 or 15%, and those are used currently to treat people with Alzheimer's disease. Are there drugs that can be combined with either a specific brain training exercise or with a device that would then make 2 + 2 = 5? That's a great question because we're headed in that direction. There's a group of researchers in England that have discovered that something as little as between 18 to 100 genes may have been responsible for the dramatic shift that occurred in the way human brains evolved over the last 3 to 7 million years. So if we could identify those 18 to 100 genes in terms of their function more fully and somehow do genetic procedures where we can enhance the function of those genes, you might well be able to create a superhuman in terms of cognitive powers.
A few years ago, we thought that if we knew the entire composition of the DNA, we would know everything about us. In fact, this is not true. The DNA is producing something which is called RNA, but not only one per site in the DNA, but thousands, so that at the end, the number of compounds which are produced by the DNA is huge. It's unbelievable. So that just knowing, in brief, the composition of the DNA doesn't help so much, except to identify mutations responsible for some diseases, for instance.
The fact that we have, hundreds of billions of cells who communicate 1,000 signals per second per cell, the web is nothing compared to that. So I was fascinated by that. What's very interesting, and one of the doctors confirmed it, can't prove it, but he said it's not illogical, is that at a certain moment, when you open up your capacity on your brain, if you get 20%, then you can open 30. But when you reach 30, you can open 40. And in fact, it's like dominoes.
Once the brain reaches 20%, it opens up and expands the rest. There are no more obstacles. They fall away like dominoes. I'm colonizing my own brain.
I would say the possibility is endless. And the reason I say that is 100 years ago, we could not have predicted what we have today. So anything I predict today is almost certainly going to be wrong 30, 40, 50 years from now. For example, telepathy. People would say telepathy is impossible, right? Even though we can read people's emotions, right? That's a form of telepathy.
Listen up, Piero Del Rio. Get off your desk, sit in your chair, pick up the red pen to the left of you and take down everything I say.
The reason I like the 10% analogy is because to me 10% is probably the number that best illustrates how much we know about the brain. Everything we know about the brain could be wrong. And so there's this old saying, if the brain were so simple that we could understand it, then we would be so simple that we could not understand it.
If we get greater brain capacity, we will learn how to control ourselves. Right now, there is no real self-control, speaking just in large human terms.
It's the dark side. What can you do with the intelligence? You can do good.
Take this medication, work out, eat organic. You'll be okay.
Or you can do bad.
Ultimately, who you are is created by your brain.
It's an interesting thought that these ideas are floating around about technology and our use of it and where it's going. Where we are now, it's a question need to be thought seriously about.
Almost everything we have today would have seemed like magic 100, 150 years ago. The internet, mobile telephones, As we've become more intelligent, there's also an element of serendipity in some of these discoveries. Our ways of thinking about the brain are simply constrained by our own human ability. Some of the big jumps have come by people sort of venturing off into strange areas. So at some point, the breakthrough will have to come from somebody who thinks out of the box.
Where is she?
Okay, so what did you think of Scarlett Johansson in that video? She has come a long way and made a statement for herself since her teen years, where she appeared in films with actors like John Ritter, Sean Connery and Robert Redford. Her breakout role came opposite Bill Murray in Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. Johansson, who was 18 years old at that time, convincingly played the role of a 25-year-old wife. In addition to Johansson's acting, she has a budding singing career as well. She has released 2 albums, Anywhere I Lay My Head and Break Up, and has appeared on numerous soundtracks. Wow. What's your favorite movie starring the actress? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and ring the notification bell to always receive the latest trailers the moment they are online. See you next time.